cwestiynau.
Questions now to the First Minister. And the first question is from Paul Davis. Thank you, Llywydd. What is the Welsh Government doing to improve health services in Pembrokeshire over the next 12 months?
Well, our priority is to provide the people of Pembrokeshire with health services that deliver the best possible outcomes for patients.
First Minister, it's important that we do improve health services in Pembrokeshire over the next 12 months to start to tackle obesity, because unfortunately obesity rates in the Hywel Dda University Health Board have increased as compared to other health boards. Now, I accept that the Assembly passed a Public Health Wales bill recently which will assist in tackling the problems of obesity, but can you tell us what specific steps the Welsh Government intends to introduce in the next 12 months in order to start to tackle obesity problems?
Well, of course, we have considered this previously, and it's fair to say that there's more yet to be done. We want to build on that basis in order to ensure that strategies are put in place to deal with this problem. It's not just the problem in Wales, but in every wealthy country in Western Europe, and of course it's arising too in countries where it hasn't been seen previously.
Thank you, Llywydd. First Minister, you know that the people of Pembrokeshire are very eager to return to a situation where paediatric services are available in Withybush during the nighttime hours, so that they're available 24/7. There's a petition to be presented to the Assembly to that end. Just for clarity, do you agree that that is the ideal position that we should aim towards, and do you, as a government, have a timetable for achieving that?
Well, what's important, of course, is that services are secure. Where services have been amended and the Royal Colleges have said that that is something that should have been done, then we support that as a government. But having said that, we must ensure that every service that can be delivered at Withybush is available in the hospital. But it doesn't mean to say that everything that people would wish to see has to be there, but we must ensure that the whole services are secure.
Question 2, Mark Ishwood.
What support is the Welsh Government giving to the North Wales economy?
We continue to support economic development across the whole of Wales by helping businesses to grow, investing in high-quality infrastructure and improving economic development conditions.
Thank you. At the CBI North Wales dinner a week ago last Thursday, which of course your colleague Ken Skates also attended alongside some other members, we heard that the North Wales Growth Deal bid was nearing completion and then ready to go to UK Government and obviously Welsh Government. When the UK Government first made the growth bid offer, it said it would be looking to work with the Welsh Government to devolve powers down. And in his stakeholders update in April, the Chief Executive of Flintshire Council, who is leading the team putting together the bid for the 6 North Wales councils, said ambitions for devolved powers to be granted to the region include transport functions, strategic land use planning, business innovation, advisory functions, careers advice and taxation, by the devolved taxation powers, all powers which are within the gift or otherwise of Welsh Government. How will your government be responding to this call?
Well, carefully, I think is the word that I'd use. Firstly, if we look at business rates, if they were to be devolved to local authorities, then 17 of the 22 local authorities would lose out. So we must be careful that we don't see that situation arise. We will look to devolve powers to appropriate bodies where we can. It's fair to say that not all local authorities are able to exercise those powers effectively. We want local authorities to work in regional bodies, but we are fully committed to the growth bid, and of course we will work with the UK Government in order to take that bid forward.
Hannah Blythen.
Since being elected a year ago, I've not only wanted to serve my own constituency, but also to be a strong voice for the whole of North East Wales. And I'm pleased that in the past 12 months, we've witnessed much Welsh Government investment in my own constituency alone, from Flint Castle to Theatre Clwyd, to support for local businesses, but alongside major proposals to improve our infrastructure across the whole of North Wales. Does the First Minister agree with me that what the people and communities of North Wales need is action, not just words, and that we will further reassure us in North Wales that the Welsh Government remains committed to investing and supporting our region?
Very much so. I mean, work is already underway, of course, to help to deliver the Wythnos Newydd project. We announced a £20 million fund to establish an advanced manufacturing and research institute supporting key employers like Airbus. We've announced plans, of course, to invest more than £200 million in the A55 A494 corridor. We've committed £50 million to take forward the first phase of the North East Wales Metro, and of course backing a little further west for the third crossing over the Menai. That's in addition to £1 million of the funding to develop a new business hub in Wrexham, supporting 100 new businesses.
I now call questions from the party leaders. First of all, Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood.
First Minister, people across Wales are grieving for those in Manchester and further afield following the horrific events last night. I'd like to pass on my condolences and solidarity with everyone affected. The senseless violence and the fact that there are children and young people among the victims has left the whole of the UK devastated. I know you made a statement earlier on, but can you place on record all of our appreciation for the men and the women of the emergency services and all of those people who have worked overnight and today to treat the wounded and to help those get to safety? It's worth reiterating, in my view, how much our public service workers are valued at a difficult time like this.
Very much so. I'm sure that the entire chamber was supportive of what I said earlier on, and indeed what the leader of Plaid Cymru has said. There are always exercises to deal with, to look at how attacks like this can be dealt with, but when it actually happens, then of course the system is tested very rigorously. And certainly what we have seen from the emergency services, what we've seen from the hospitals, what we've seen from the community shows the level of resilience even in the face of tragedy.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. And while the facts as to who is responsible are still being established, we know that attacks like this can put enormous strain upon community relations in Welsh cities as well as in other parts of the UK. One of the objectives of extremists, aside from harming innocent people, is to divide communities. They want to make people fearful and suspicious of each other so that they can profit from alienation and division. The real story is of people of all backgrounds and faiths, emergency workers, taxi drivers, coming together to face down those extremists. Will you reiterate today, First Minister, that none of us here will let terrorists divide our communities?
Absolutely not. Extremists only represent themselves, a very small number of people with a worldview that is intolerant and is driven to violence. They are happy to murder people of all religions or none. They are happy to murder young people who are doing nothing more than going out for a night out. It's too early to say, of course, the extent of what surrounded the events last night. The police are still investigating, and it is important that there's no speculation in order for those investigations to be carried forward. But make no mistake, whoever carried out the attacks of last night represented only themselves and a very small group of people around them. They can never represent an entire community.
Diolch yn fawr, First Minister, and I'm sure that message would be appreciated by many communities throughout Wales and beyond. It's important, First Minister, that everyone remains calm and that we don't change the way we live our lives in the face of this senseless and tragic violence. People are planning to visit our capital city in the coming weeks, need further reassurance. Can you update the Assembly on the security preparations for major events, such as the Champions League final in Cardiff on June the 3rd?
Yes, I touched on this in the conversation I had with the Deputy National Security Advisor. The security arrangements for the Champions League final are robust. I met with a number of the organisations involved last week for the final time, including Gold Command. All the preparations are in place in terms of communications, in terms of security. Members and indeed members of the public will see over the course of the next few days the arrangements being put in place in order that people can come to our capital city to enjoy themselves and be left with a favourable impression. We know there are some people who would not wish that to be so. And anything that can be learned from the events of the last 24 hours will be factored in to the security arrangements for the Champions League final. But this is the world we live in. We are aware of what needs to be done in order to provide for the security of the public when they come to our capital city, and working with the police and other authorities, that's exactly what we intend to do.
Leader of the Opposition, Andrew R.T. Davis.
If I may, Presiding Officer, I will not take my 3 questions today, given I think we need to stand shoulder to shoulder and face down this act of evil, this atrocity that happened in Manchester last night. As a father, I cannot think of anything more horrific than being separated from your children, separated from your loved ones, in the uncertain knowledge of what might have happened to them. I, like many parents, would have dropped my children off at events to meet at a designated spot, and they come back safely. And I can only offer my love, my support, my condolence to each and every member who's gone through a bereavement, the injured in hospital, and tribute to the dedication of the public services who responded so quickly and so professionally to that atrocity, that act of evil that visited Manchester last night. But I would like to put 3 points to you, if I may, First Minister. The first is what came evident today was the amount of people that did go from North Wales to Manchester, as on an everyday basis attend events in Manchester. On the radio this morning, many parents, many youngsters who'd attended that event. There will be a requirement for help and support. I don't know the destination of some of the bereaved or obviously the injured parties in the hospitals where they've come from, but I'm sure some of those individuals will have come from North Wales. And I know it's early hours and early days yet, but what calibration, what work is the Welsh Government doing with the public services in North Wales to make sure that help and support is there for the families in the education field, but also in the health field as well, to make sure that no stone is left unturned when families look for that support and look for that help from those services in North Wales. And if extra resources are required, I'm sure you will confirm this, those extra resources will be made available to local authorities and also to the health boards. Secondly, as the Leader of Plaid Cymru quite clearly identified, we do have a major sporting event in the Champions League happening here, the final, in a little over 10 days' time. But there are events across the whole of Wales that happen on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis, and it falls to all of us to play our part to work with the security services, whether it be police or MI5 or any of the security services, to make sure we can be the eyes and ears on the streets and reporting what we see. But how can the Welsh Government distill down any information it has so that the public can have confidence that they can attend these events in the full knowledge that every measure possible has been put in place to protect the public and to allow democracy and our free society to continue to function, because we must not be cowed by these acts of violence. That is one thing that is quite critical. And thirdly, what I'd like to just seek off the First Minister as we do go forward is that any information that is available, and the First Minister has indicated that he has received a security briefing this morning, and I presume some of that information, if not all that information, might be confidential, but where information can be made available, it is made available in a timely manner to the public in Wales, to organisers of events, so that, again, people can go about their everyday lives and play the important role that we all have to play in our great democracy of standing up against these acts of evil that visited Manchester last night. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Manchester, and whatever happens, we will not be beaten by such atrocities.
I thank the Leader of the Welsh Conservatives for his comments. It is difficult for us in this chamber and the vast majority of people across the world to conceive of a philosophy that holds that murdering young people advances the cause of humanity. How can we understand those thought processes? But we know there are some, unfortunately, who hold those views. And there is, of course, a duty on all authorities to provide as much protection as possible to the public against these people. After the events in Tunisia, we did set up a helpline that looked to provide signposting to counselling for people. We will look to do the same thing again in the aftermath of this event. We are not aware of anybody who has been injured or killed who comes from Wales as yet. Nothing to indicate that, but of course we will monitor the situation very, very closely. One thing I think we do need to be careful of is not to put people off coming to events. He is right when he says that the last thing we should do is to modify our behaviour and our beliefs, for that matter, in the face of terrorism. That's exactly what they want. They want us to become more intolerant so that we share their intolerance. They want us to alter the way in which we exercise our freedom and go to events. They see that as a victory. What I can say to people is that, of course, we will be taking further advice with regard to the Champions League, but a lot of work's already been done regarding security around the Champions League, and that work has been in train for many, many months, as members would expect, given the fact that it is an event of significant size. In terms of information, he has identified the issues. Firstly, some information is shared on what is effectively Privy Council basis. It's confidential. Members will understand that there is information that needs to be kept confidential so as not to interfere with any police investigation. But of course, where information is no longer sensitive and where that information needs to be shared with the public, then that will happen at the appropriate time.
Arweinydd Grŵp UKIP.
Leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
Can I congratulate the First Minister on speaking so finely for us all in this Assembly in his statement at the start of today's proceedings, and to add my condolences and the condolences of my party, all my members here and members of the party in the country, to those who have lost their lives and been maimed in the horrible outrage in Manchester. I agree with the First Minister that it is impossible for us to understand the mindset of those who are prepared indiscriminately to slaughter children in the way that happened last night. Not the first time in the Arndale Centre, of course, in Manchester, where an event of this kind has occurred. When I was a Member of Parliament, just a few miles away from the centre of Manchester back in the 1990s, we had a similar kind of outrage from, in those days, the IRA. But I'm sure the First Minister will agree with me that the best way that a democratic society can fight against such tendencies is to carry on as normal so far as we can. And for a democratic assembly, like the National Assembly for Wales, whilst it is right that we should suspend the party political dogfight for today, we're in the middle of an election campaign, nationally as well, and the best act of defiance for us is to continue to do what democratic societies do and which totalitarian societies do not. That is to solve our differences by means of debate rather than by the bomb and the bullet. And so I have no further questions for the First Minister today, but I'd like to express my solidarity with everyone else who has spoken on what was going to be a sombre day for us in any event because of tributes to Rodri, but which has been made immeasurably worse by the events of last night.
Can I thank the Leader of UKIP for his comments? One of the main purposes of acts such as this is to make us more angry and more intolerant in order to provoke an even greater reaction. We do not need to do that. We are bigger than they are. Today, the mood of the Chamber is sombre. That's true, and with good reason. In the next few days, we'll get back to debate. We'll get back to robust electioneering. That's the nature of what we do. But that is the essence of our democracy. Robust debate and exchange of ideas is what gives us the ability to see ourselves as a free society. And the actions of last night were designed to close down that which makes us a free society. It is absolutely right to say that we should carry on. Of course, we have to be cautious when it comes to security, and for people who visit, not just Wales, but any other country, they need to be assured that their security is paramount to us. And I can say that is absolutely true as far as the Welsh Government and indeed the UK Government is concerned. But I have children in the age range of the majority of those who have been at that concert last night. What exactly did they do to deserve to be injured or killed? We can't answer that question. The answer to that question lies in a tormented, intolerant and dangerous mind. And that was the mind, I believe, of the perpetrator who carried out the attack last night. But, as I said, we can get above that. The strongest message that we can send to those who wish to terrorise our society is that they cannot win. And they cannot win because we will carry on enjoying our freedoms. We will carry on enjoying what we have built over many decades and centuries, and we will never give way to their intolerance and their violence.
Cwestiwn 3,
Question 3, Steffan Lewis.
Rail network in the last financial year.
The Welsh Government provides £180 million in franchise subsidy payments and funding for additional services and rolling stock.
I thank the First Minister for the answer, and I declare an interest that my sister is an employee of Network Rail. I wonder if the First Minister can provide updated figures on the amount of profit made by the current operator of that franchise. I have figures for 2012 that show that that company made a profit of £13.6 million, and of course is a company that is entirely owned by the German government, and bidding is underway for the next franchise. I wonder if the First Minister can tell us whether he remains committed to returning the rail network to public ownership, and if so, does he believe that an opportunity has been missed in not using the operator of last resort provision in order to bring it back into Welsh public ownership as quickly as possible?
Committed to that. Unfortunately, of course, due to the provision in the Wales Act, it's not an option open to us. We have not been permitted to look at an arm's-length public body being used to run the franchise. Unlike in Scotland, he will know that this is an issue where we share the same view and something where we are in dispute with the UK government over. As part of the franchising process next year, we expect to see the best value for money delivered for Welsh customers and, of course, significant investment in rolling stock. There are many people who use the Valleys lines who are on rolling stock that are many decades old. They deserve better than that, and we want to see that delivered over the course of the next franchise period.
Jenny Rathbone.
Diolch, Llywyd. It is a strange irony, is it not, that Arriva Trains receives one of the highest subsidies of any public train provider, and yet has just declared record profits. I'm sure you, like me, would like to see a government that with a more rational approach to the way we run our railways after June the 8th. But for now, we have a UK government that is unfortunately committed to insisting that the £125 million that has been set aside to improve our rail services must be spent on electrifying the Valleys lines, when all the experts are clear that light rail is both more cost-effective and will improve the journey times in a way that electrification will not. What do you think your government can do to ensure that there is a much more rational approach to the way we invest public money to ensure that we get the gains that are needed in the metro system that we hope to deliver across South East Wales?
Well, we have a curious system where a public subsidy of £180 million is provided to a private company who then make a profit of £40 million on top. I mean, it's very difficult to justify that sort of level. I mean, we weren't in charge of the franchise when it was awarded last time around, but it's very difficult to justify that to the public. Of course, light rail is electrified. There are different ways of doing it. You don't have to have overhead cabling. There are other means of doing that. But for me, the core principle of the metro is that it should be extendable. Yes, of course, we have the core network in place at the moment, but in time, the plan is to look at new routes that are not currently served by heavy rail. If we are serious about developing the region around Cardiff and beyond, then we have to make sure that people can travel without having to get into their cars, thus causing greater congestion. And so that extendability and also the mix of provision that will be part, no doubt, of the metro will provide that flexibility for the future as well.
Nick Ramsey.
First Minister, 60 years ago, 70s, I would have been able to travel from my village of Raglan in Monmouthshire by rail to Cardiff. That can't be done now because obviously we lost a lot of the branch line rail network back in the 50s and 60s. You've mentioned the need to make sure that the metro is expandable and that it reaches areas of South Wales and the South East Wales City region that it hasn't to date, or wouldn't be able to at the moment. Have you looked any more at the issue of a potential metro hub at the Celtic Manor, or within the area of the Celtic Manor? I have raised this in the past with the Cabinet Secretary for Infrastructure. I think that if you looked at developing a hub at that point, you could then have a very good core to build out from into the rural areas around Newport and up in my neck of the woods to make sure that everyone can benefit from the metro.
Yes, I'm tempted to pull his leg and say, well, Tory government closed down the railway line, but I'm not quite sure whether it was or not. But it was a long time ago. We know that. What we do know is that in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, many lines were closed by governments of either persuasion. We also saw, of course, the closure of the Carmarthen-Aberystwyth line to passengers in '64 and to milk in 1973, with the track being taken up very soon after. A great tragedy, something we could have certainly profited from in terms of being able to run a service on that line, at least as far as Strata, Florida now. But yes, I take his point. It is hugely important that areas of Wales that are not being served by any form of railway should be served by in the future by a form of transport that may include probably light rail rather than heavy rail. We know, of course, in his constituency that much of the former rail track going up to Monmouth has been built over by the dual carriageway. And the Celtic Manor is an important part of our plans for developing the metro. As I said, at the core of the metro, of thinking for the metro, is that the system should be flexible and extendable, and that means looking at parts of Wales that have not had a rail service for many, many years, as much of his constituency has not had.
Cwestiwn 4, John.
Question 4, John Griffiths.
Excuse me, Lloyd, I'm temporarily embarrassed, I'm afraid. I'll have to get that question up. Yes, will the First Minister provide an update on progress with integrated transport in South East Wales? Diolch yn fawr.
Yes,
I think you should thank Hugh Iranca Davis.
The National Transport Finance Plan is a live document and it contains an ambitious programme of interventions that are in varying stages of development, and we will update the plan periodically to reflect developments over time and, of course, the changing profile of need across Wales.
Would you agree with me, First Minister, that active travel must be an important part of integrated transport in South East Wales? I know that local authorities are working up their integrated plans for the future. Welsh Government must continue to take a keen interest in those plans and make sure that they fit with that wider integrated transport agenda.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the change that is happening, it's not yet happened across every local authority, the change that is happening at the moment is that cycling and walking are seen as modes of transport rather than means of recreation alone. And we know that many of our cities are well placed to deliver cycle paths and cycle routes. We know that the issue for many people who might cycle is they don't want to be on the road with cars. For the brave, yes, they do. I know that, and quite rightly so, because they have every right to be on the road. But the more we can develop cycle routes that are physically separated from cars, the more people we will attract, I believe, onto those routes, because they don't feel they have to compete with cars and lorries on the road. And that's very much part, of course, as he will know, of the Active Travel Act.
Mark Reckless.
Following the very welcome abolition of the 7 tolls, and we hope the construction of an M4 relief road, does the First Minister agree with me that the importance of rail as an alternative to integrate with the road system only increases? And does he welcome the decision of his Cabinet Secretary that the Mega Undi proposal for a new train station should be taken forward, as well as Llanwern and St Mellons that are identified within the first 12? As putting 3 new rail stations on that route between Cardiff and the 7 would transform the nature of the service.
Yeah, I'm not sure the tolls have actually been abolished yet, but certainly that's something that we would welcome. I always welcome statements made by my Cabinet Ministers, and it's right to say that in different stages we are looking at reopening lines to the east of Cardiff and Newport, an area that's not been well served by the rail network. We know, for example, that the eastern part of the city of Cardiff has been historically very poorly served. There is a need to improve public transport links to the eastern part of the city. And the same applies, of course, to settlements between Newport and the Severn Bridge. We can't simply build roads. We must make sure that as roads are improved and built, that we also provide better public transport connections as well.
Gareth Bennett.
Diolch, Llywydd. One of the harder things to achieve with public transport is the travel card that enables passengers to travel on different types of transport. Now, I know that your government is going to be involved with negotiating the new rail franchises. How much of a priority will providing that kind of travel card form in your talks with the rail companies?
Well, there are two issues. Firstly, it's trickier dealing with travel card negotiations at railway stations because there's more than one operator. In terms of the Metro, it's essential that there is an integrated Oyster-style travel card available, although even in London now, of course, it's possible to travel simply by using a contactless debit card. So actually, the Oyster cards are now even less essential than once they were. For some people, of course, they're important for those who don't have access to contactless cards. Yes, they need them to travel, but it is absolutely crucial that the network of the South East Wales Metro has a one card that covers all journeys within the Metro area. Otherwise, of course, it's not an integrated system.
Nid yw Michelle Brown yma.
Michelle Brown is not in the chamber to ask question 5. Question 6, Hannah Blythin.
Does the Minister provide an update on how the Year of Legends will benefit North East Wales?
Yes, our tourism strategy sets out our priorities in supporting the tourism industry, including capital and development funding, along with marketing and promotional opportunities. We know that the Year of Legends provides an opportunity for us to build on that foundation.
Thank you, First Minister. As part of the Year of Legends, we are waiting with great anticipation the winning design for a new Welsh Government supported installation at Flint Castle. I'm sure everybody in the community is looking forward to this latest legend descending on the shores of the castle. But there is another local legend of old that the constituency, and particularly the community of Mould, are rightly proud of. The Mould Gold Cape was found in 1833 by workmen quarrying for stone in a burial mound and is currently part of the British Museum collection in London. It's previously left the British Museum to be temporarily exhibited in Wrexham, but it's never actually made it back to Mould to be temporarily exhibited in the town where it was found. First, as we commemorate and celebrate the Year of Legends, do you share with many of my constituents that it'd be great to see the Gold Cape return to be exhibited in the town where it was discovered?
Yes, I mean, the Gold Cape is famous, of course. I'm sure the people of Mould would like to see the actual Gold Cape there rather than it being commemorated in the name of a pub. It was in Wrexham. The difficulty at the moment, of course, is that there's nowhere in Mould for the Cape to be exhibited, and that is what needs to be resolved first. In order for that to happen, what the local authority, Flintshire, could look at taking the lead, talking with us as Welsh Government to see what could be done in order to provide a facility with the right atmosphere, in terms of the atmospherics, and in terms of the right security, in order to provide a home for the Gold Cape, even if temporary, in the years to come. We're more than happy, of course, to work with the local authority and with local people to see how we can move this forward to bring the Cape home, and for the people of Mould to be able to see the Cape in its hometown.
Janet Finch-Saunders.
And a good question from the member there for us in North Wales. First Minister, Visit Britain has launched Where Stories Become Legends, an international film tourism campaign with Warner Brothers to coincide with the release of the King Arthur film, parts of which were filmed in Snowdonia. How is Visit Wales using the Year of Legends campaign to collaborate on this? And what future plans do you have to promote the region of North Wales, home to some of the most dramatic and beautiful landscapes in the world that are available to the film industry and its fans?
Well, King Arthur was a film, if I remember rightly, we supported as a government. A film that we took a stake in. It's a film that, yes, has been located in Wales, and also a film, of course, that has benefited from, I believe, post-production in Wales as well. The member asked what we have done particularly for the north of Wales. Well, I can say that just over £500,000 has been made available in this financial year for projects in the north. So 5 projects via the Regional Tourism Engagement Fund, totalling £250,000, and a further £265,000 via the Tourism Product Innovation Fund to support 6 projects across the north as well. I can say since April 2013, the Tourism Investment Support Scheme has made offers of funding to 48 businesses in the north, totalling nearly £8 million. That's brought in additional investment of £12.5 million and assisted 551 jobs in terms of them being secured, with another 433 jobs being created.
Llyr Griffith.
Thank you, Llywydd. Whilst it's quite appropriate that we attract people to celebrate and become aware of our legends and our story in North East Wales, to refer back to the original question, there is a significant market also in the north east of Wales, and very often the local people don't appreciate the history and the assets that we have in that area. So may I ask, while this project encourages the whole of Wales, shouldn't we do far more to work at a local level? That worked with the National Trust in my days. The number of visitors increased significantly, and the number of people who were volunteering and taking ownership of those assets, which strengthened the wider offer within North East Wales.
Well, it's true to say that we never appreciate what's on our doorstep. As regards the projects I've already alluded to, many of those projects are working in order to raise awareness of local history by local residents. And a lot of work, of course, is being done by voluntary organisations also, but of course it is vital that we ensure that people know what's available and have an interest in their own history, so that they can act as ambassadors for their own areas and regions and ensure that more people come and stay and spend money.
Question 7, Russell George.
Does the Minister make a statement on access to GP medical services in Montgomeryshire?
We continue to work with the Health Board and other partners in Wales to take a range of actions to improve access to healthcare services that are safe and sustainable and as close to people's homes as possible.
Thank you, First Minister. I've been contacted by a parent who has been trying to arrange for a simple medical examination for her daughter at her local surgery in Newtown. And this is a requirement in advance of her going abroad to study. Now, the surgery has made the decision not to undertake any further medicals of this nature due to the GP shortage. Now, no other practices in the area are able to also offer this an appointment. The parent has even offered to pay. My office has been in contact with the local health board, who are also not able to offer any support. So as it stands, from my understanding, the only option available now for this young lady to get a medical that she needs to go and study abroad is to pay for it privately, and she would need to go, the nearest area to do this would be somewhere in England. So one, I'd be grateful if you could offer any advice to my constituent, and two, if you could offer any update on the shortage of GPs that we see, particularly in Mid-Wales, that is becoming, I'm sure you would agree, also more of a crisis that we have to deal with.
I don't understand the view taken by the GP practice. What I don't know, of course, I would invite to write to me as well, of course, with more details, but GPs don't provide every service for free. Some services have always been paid for. GPs are paid, sometimes paid through the NHS. If, for example, they carry out blood tests, sometimes, of course, they charge the individual directly, signing for things quite often. So I don't know whether this is a service that would routinely be provided on the NHS or not, but he has raised the issue with me. If he provides me with details, I will, of course, respond.
Question 8.
Question 8, Angela Byrne.
Good afternoon, First Minister. What is the Welsh Government doing to promote staff well-being within the Welsh public sector?
Well, we do work closely with public sector employers and trade unions to promote staff well-being as an essential part of the delivery of good Welsh public services.
You will be aware that almost 8,000 staff members of the NHS in Wales were affected by anxiety, stress, depression and a number of other psychiatric illnesses in the year 2015-16, and the trend appears to be the same going forward. A Newham Bevan Health Board created and filled the post of Head of Employee Wellbeing, and Adrian Neil and his colleagues are making great strides forward in reducing staff absence and improving employee morale. But First Minister, this wellbeing position is not filled in all the Welsh health boards. Some created the post and then decided to remove it for budgetary reasons. Others have got the post, but they are vacant again for budgetary reasons. Given the scale of the challenge that we face and how difficult it is to recruit people into the Welsh NHS, I wondered if you might be able to outline what plans you could have to rectify this issue.
Well, a Health and Wellbeing Programme Board has been established, which oversees the programme and the collaborative agenda of NHS Wales in respect of improving staff health and well-being and reducing levels of sickness absence. All NHS organisations have achieved or are working towards the corporate health standard, so we would expect all NHS boards to achieve that standard and provide the right level of support for staff, particularly with regards to their own mental health.
Question 9, Nathan.
Question 9, Nathan Gill.
First Minister, will you make a statement, please, on the North Wales growth deal?
Yes, we'll continue to press the case for a North Wales growth bid with the UK Government. The reference by the Chancellor to the North Wales growth bid in his recent budget, which seems some time ago now, is a positive step forward, and we trust the UK Government will maintain that commitment.
Thank you, First Minister. A key part of the North Wales growth deal is Welsh the nuclear power plant, which is going to be built on Anglesey, which will create many well-paid jobs, highly skilled, not just on Anglesey, but throughout the whole of North Wales. Now, having read through the Labour Party's manifesto, there is clear support for our nuclear energy sector. But just days before the general election was called, Labour's Shadow Chancellor vowed to end nuclear power as part of the Labour government's first 100 days in office. Now, it is well known, of course, about the fact that Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, has for many years opposed nuclear power. Could you take this opportunity to not only clarify yourself and your government's opinion and goals for nuclear power, but also the Labour Party's aspirations for the nuclear industry?
We are 100% committed to Welsh. We have already been working with Welsh itself and also with skills suppliers in order to make sure that as many local people as possible have the skills that will be required there. It will provide many temporary construction jobs and, importantly, around 600 jobs in the community. There is no wavering in our support for the project.
Darren Miller.
Firstly, can I thank you, First Minister, for the remarks that you've made this afternoon in relation to the attack in Manchester. I'm sure they'll be words of comfort at this very difficult time for many families. As a Mancunian myself, I'm very familiar with that part of the world, and I know that many of my constituents, some of my constituents, were actually present at the event because they have been in touch with me. There's no doubt that events like this have an impact not just on the night for those who have been injured or lost their lives, but indeed for many years to come, including a psychological impact potentially for those who were present. Many of them, as you've already indicated, were of course teenagers. Now, as a father, I know of teenagers. I know how important it is that young people receive support in a timely manner when they need it. And I was very pleased to hear that you are considering the establishment of a helpline for any individuals from Wales who may need access to support in the future. Can I just ask you to confirm that there will be that psychological support also, not just in terms of the physical support which might be available, but the psychological support, should it be needed, by any of those young people or indeed any of the adults that were attending last night as well? That's the intention. The intention is so that people can be signposted to organisations that can provide that support in the longer term. It tends to be the case with PTSD, for example, that people don't see it at the beginning. It develops over time as people begin to understand the consequences of what might have happened or understand the consequences of what they've seen. So it is hugely important to make sure that that support is available, not just for a week or two, but over the course of time that the individual needs it in order to come to terms with what they've witnessed and what they've experienced.
Sir Griffith.
Thank you, Llywydd. We know that significant sums will be invested in light of this growth bid in North Wales, but the local authorities have come together to create a joint committee which will oversee that process. But may I ask how you as a government will ensure that these investments do reflect your strategic priorities in North Wales and aren't led to run in parallel, so that everything works together as one effort for economic regeneration in North Wales? Because I'm not really sure where the government's voice is heard within the context of this new joint committee, or other sectors such as the business sector, HE and FE in the region, which were a prominent part of the Economic Ambition Board, but will now have a non-voting role in these new structures?
Well, as regards the bid itself and the city deal that's taking place now, is the local authorities that are in the lead and not Welsh Government. We are part of the process, but they ensure that the governance structure is in place and that they consider regional projects, not just projects that benefit only one county. And so we, of course, want to ensure that the structures are in place. We're confident that that is the case. We've seen the local governments working together, whoever may run those local authorities, and we are confident that the funding will be used in the way in which we would wish to see. And we, of course, will collaborate with local authorities to ensure that our priorities as a government are secured, and there isn't very much difference between our priorities and the county's priorities to ensure that the benefit, that they are of mutual benefit.
Thank you, First Minister. The next item is the